Chapter 5, Comma Usage. This chapter we're going to be looking at how to apply the different comma rules that we have. We're going to look at rules to separate and set off items. We're going to look at how to detect errors in a sentence or in various parts of letters. We're also going to look at how to use the appropriate revision symbols for commas, like inserting a comma or deleting a comma or changing a period to a comma. One of the things you want to do is be able to identify the different types of commas that give you trouble. So commas are most frequently misused, is the most frequently misused punctuation mark. And you can actually understand where you have problems. And if you do recognize where you do have comma usage problems, then what you want to do is identify them, and then hopefully this particular chapter will help you get over that. Let's look at some of the comma rules that we have. One of them, and I'm on page 106 in the book, one of the rules is you're going to place a comma after the day in the date line. So February is the month, 11 is the day, 2008 is the year. Notice that the comma follows the day. You also have addresses commas that we use in addresses. You have two types of address in a letter. You have an inside address, you have a return address, okay? On page 106, they provide you examples of this. But on your inside address, you want to put a comma between the city and the state. And on the return address, you want to place a comma between the city, state, and the day in the date. You also want to use commas when you're dealing with closing. So on page 106, number 5 talks about your commas when you're dealing with closing. So you have closing at the end of a sentence, like sincerely yours, or thank you, talk to you soon, whatever. You're going to put a comma after that. You also use a comma for when you have identification line where the name and the title appear on the same line. Not if they're on separate lines, but if they appear on the same line. On page 106, you also can see the revision symbols that we use for correcting comma errors. So there is an insert symbol, and we're used to the insert symbol, but you insert a comma using the insert symbol, the caret and the comma. You can delete a comma using the delete symbol and putting a circle around the comma. And then you also have a symbol that you use to change a period to a comma. So all this information you will find on page 106 in your book. So take the time now, stop, complete the exercises. You can find the exercise on my website. It's going to be under your daily exercises for chapter 4, and you just want to do the very first one that deals with dates, it deals with addresses and things of that nature. If you have a problem, you can always contact me. So before you begin this exercise, you do want to stop the video, and then you can pick up later. Hopefully you completed the exercise. So now we want to go on to commas that set off. You have dates in letters and in documents. So you want to use two commas when the date, including the month and the year, is used in a sentence. You also want to put a comma. The comma should follow the year if it's all in a sentence. And you do not want to use a comma when just the month and the year is used in the sentence. I have two examples here. Kathleen met her husband on December 5th, comma, 2008, comma, in Mill Valley, comma, California. Here you have December 5th, comma, because we always put a comma after the day. And then because it's in the middle of a sentence, we are going to place the comma right after the 2003. But notice in the next sentence, we do not have commas at all because we say in this sentence that they met in December 2003 in Mill Valley. 2003 does not have a date, so therefore you don't need a comma. You don't need a comma between December nor a comma after 2003. You also want to use a comma to separate the city and the state. So you also want to use a comma to set off a province or country from the name of a city. As you can see here, the two examples are, we visited Hartford, Connecticut last summer. Well, Hartford, Connecticut. So you want to separate the city from the state, but you also want to differentiate the two groupings from the rest of the sentence. So you're going to put a comma after the word Connecticut, after the state, Connecticut. The same thing here is with Paris, France, is sometimes called the City of Lights. Now it doesn't look grammatically correct, but it is grammatically correct when you use this information in a sentence, particularly when it's found, when the city and state is found in the middle of a sentence or at the beginning of a sentence. And then you have direct address. Direct address. What is a direct address? That is when you are stating to someone directly. You're speaking specifically to them. So you're saying, the examples that I've given you are you sure, Sarah, that tuition is due today? Who are we talking to? We're talking to Sarah. So we're asking the question if tuition is due today. Because we're directly talking to Sarah, we're going to enclose Sarah, set it off with a comma before, and set it off with a comma after. Now notice what happens when you're talking to the person directly and they are at the end of the sentence. This next example shows you this. I will guide you on your trip, Tammy. Notice between trip and Tammy there is a comma. You also have words or phrases that are appositions. So first thing you need to know is you need to know what an apposition is. An apposition is two adjacent nouns that have the same reference. Appositives are always set off with two commas unless they appear at the end of a sentence. So I've given you two examples here, actually three examples here. Your friend Bill is in trouble. Friend is the noun, Bill is the appositive. Another one is a good apposition is this sentence here. My brother's car, and I am actually describing the car. It's a sporty red convertible with bucket seats. It's the envy of our family. So what happens is a sporty red convertible with bucket seats is an apposition. We're describing the car. It is the description of the car. Therefore, we're going to set it off with commas. So a sporty red convertible with bucket seats are going to begin with a comma and end with a comma. And then we're going to go on with a sentence. Here, the car is the noun, and the sporty red convertible bucket seats is the appositive. Okay? And then we have parenthetical or non-essential elements. Parenthetical and non-essential elements is very similar to appositions. A parenthetical element are when words or phrases are used parenthetically, meaning they serve as explanation or qualification, but do not affect the grammatical structure of the sentences in which they occur. So parenthetical elements, you're dealing with words or phrases that are like after all what? Something else. Whatever you're saying, before and after all does not affect the sentence. As a matter of fact, again, you can say something before and then say as a matter of fact. say something afterwards, and most likely it will not affect the grammatical correctness of the sentence. So you have by the way, consequently, for example, however, on and on and on. Parenthetical and non-essential elements. How do you determine if the element is non-essential? Non-essential means that the sentence does not need it in order for it to be correct. It needs it to qualify it, it needs it to explain, it needs it to show specificity, but it does not need it in order for the sentence to be correct. So you're going to do this. How do you determine if the element is non-essential? Read the sentence without the words set off. If the sentence is clear without the words or words, then use comma to set it off. So the example I'm giving you of two non-essentials. Basically, my niece is playing in the living room. So I can say my niece is playing in the living room. What is non-essential is wearing a yellow jumpsuit. The wearing the yellow jumpsuit describes my niece, and you don't need wearing a yellow jumpsuit in order for the sentence to be correct. So wearing a yellow jumpsuit is a non-essential. Same thing for the word the captain of the team. Tom was injured in the game. There's several Toms on the team, so how can we differentiate between the Toms? We can say Tom, the captain of the team. The captain of the team is a non-essential. It is not needed for the sentence to be grammatically correct. So essential is it's needed. If the item is needed in order for the sentence to make sense, then you don't use commas. But if an item is not needed in order for the sentence to make sense, then you do use commas, and that's when it's called non-essential. Let's look at the address, and we're dealing with commas that separate. You can use commas after each part of an address within the sentence. So each part of the address, Karen, the gift should be, you should send the gift to Karen Valentine, comma, 1, 2, 3, 4 State Street, comma, Dallas, comma, Texas 75052, comma, before February 14. Notice that there is no punctuation between the state and the zip code. Now you have a comma because if you put it on the envelope, Karen Valentine would be on one line, 1, 2, 3, 4 State Street would be on the next line, Dallas, Texas 75052 would be on another line. But what you're doing is after each unit or each grouping, you're placing a comma when you put it all on one line horizontally. You also want to use commas when you have 3 or more items. So you want to separate 3 or more items in a sentence with a comma. Tom, Dick, and Harry are 3 peas in a pod. So you see the word Tom, you see the person Dick, and Harry. Notice that you have commas. We also had milk, biscuits, and cream. Notice there are 3 items or more. You're going to separate them with commas.